In the first dusk before time had a name, before thought found form, and before silence learned to listen, there existed only the vast without shape, a fathomless, trembling shroud that would later be called chaos, though no mortal tongue captures the true weight of the word. It was the breath before the breath, the dream before the dream, the unlit womb in which all possibilities curled like sleeping serpents. Nothing moved there, for movement had not yet been conceived. Nothing spoke, for sound itself had no identity. And yet, something waited, and that waiting throbbed like a slow, unending pulse in the deep. From that pulse emerged the first tremor, a quiver, a shift, the faintest ripple across the dark ocean of absolute potential. And from that ripple, the primordial gods awakened. The first consciousnesses, ancient beyond all reckoning, fierce and terrible in their purity. The first to rise was Vorlith, the shadow that remembers. He unfolded from the darkness like a cloak, shedding itself from the shoulders of oblivion. No eyes adorned his face, yet his gaze pierced through all things that might one day exist. His voice, when he first attempted it, was a long exhale that bent the void around him. Then came Araviel, the white flame before dawn, whose light was not illumination, but revelation. Her fire did not burn, it sculpted. She rose as a pillar of pale radiance, spiraling gently like a dancer who had not yet learned the meaning of restraint. And with them came the others, Myrakos, the titanic pulse, Cylindra, weaver of what might be, Thalanox, the hungering storm, Arender, who carried within him the echo of final endings. They were not born, they simply became, for chaos had willed itself to split, and its children were the shattering. For an age beyond measure, they existed in that twilight, drifting like vast constellations through the unmade sea. No words passed between them at first, for the concept of speech hung unformed. Yet they knew one another, as only beings crafted from the same wound of existence could know. Emotions rumbled between them in waves: curiosity, fear, longing, incomprehension. It was Aravheel who first gave shape to communication. Her light flared, and from its rhythm came the first articulation of thought. "We are." The others stirred. The words were not sound, but essence imprinted upon the void. Vorlith responded, his shadow tightening. "We are not alone." And there, carried on their awakening, rose a new disturbance, one older than even they. For as their consciousness grew, so too did the chaos around them churn, twisting with unseen intentions. Something vast, buried deeper than the dark roots of creation, stirred in answer to their presence. A presence without form or mercy. A presence that despised boundaries. Ulgaraz, the nameless maw, the untethered devourer. Old as the first pulse, eternal as dread. It did not awaken, it had never slept. A low rumble spread through the void. Not a sound, but a primordial instinct. Flee. But there was nowhere to flee to. The primordials turned as one, and reality bent as Ulgaraz made itself known. A swirling hurricane of raw chaos, a hunger so absolute that it warped the very concept of existence around its being. Limbs that were not limbs, jaws that were not jaws, 1,000 ever-changing faces howling in silent fury. And in that moment, the primordial gods knew fear. Thalanox, storm forging itself into shape, boomed. "This thing will unmake what we are not yet done becoming." Cylindra stretched threads of possibility before her like silver spider sinews. Fate is still unwoven. Should it consume us now, nothing shall ever be. Myrakos, whose heartbeat was the first rhythm of the universe to be, pounded the void. Then let us carve a place where it cannot follow. And thus began the first war, the war before creation, fought in a realm with no matter, no time, no rules, only will and raw divinity. Aravhiel's flame created the first boundary, a shimmering sphere of intent. Vorlith's shadow solidified it. Myrakos pressed outward until the boundary bulged like a great cosmic lung. They did not create a world. They created the idea of a place where chaos was no longer supreme, and that idea enraged Ulgaraz. It plunged toward them in a tidal wave of destruction. The primordials braced. They clashed. There was no light, no explosion. Only concepts tearing, laws screaming, possibilities snapping. Thalanox hurled storms that split dimensional fabric. Arender unleashed endings that could kill ideas before they took root. Cylindra wove fragile strands of might-be into shields that shattered as soon as they formed. Vorlith smothered pieces of the Devourer in absolute negation. Aravheel burned reality into sharper definition with every strike. But Ulgaraz did not fall. It could not fall. It was chaos unfiltered, and to destroy chaos was to destroy the foundation of existence. Still, the battle carved scars. Those scars became fractures. Those fractures became planes, the earliest proto-realms swirling with half-formed matter and raw potential. And as the primordials strained against their foe, sparks flew from them, sparks that ignited into suns, into oceans, into mountains, into storms. Thus, creation began not by design, but by war. The conflict raged for uncountable aeons. The primordials weakened. Their essence ran like blood across the emptiness, and wherever it fell, new laws crystallized: gravity, time, death, memory. These laws hardened into chains that bound chaos ever so slightly. At last, realizing they could not destroy Ulgaraz, Cylindra conceived a desperate weaving. Let us bind it in a fate of our choosing. And Arinder, who understood endings better than any, whispered, and seal it with the death of one of our own. Silence rippled through the gods. Sacrifice had not existed until this moment. Miracos lowered himself, heartbeat slowing. If one of us must fall, let it be me. Let my end be the first true death. But Aravheel seized him. No, your pulse shapes all. Without your rhythm, existence will stagger and crumble. Vorlith stepped forward. I will fall. Shadow is meant to recede. If my unmaking cages the Devourer, so be it. Aravheel's radiance flickered like a grieving star. You were the first to awaken, my brother. He bowed his shapeless head. Then let me be the first to end. The plan was made. Together, the primordials wove a prison of impossible dimensions, a labyrinth of unreached futures, sealed behind layers of destiny. But the prison required an anchor, a cosmic keystone forged from the essence of a god. Vorlith knelt, shadows unraveling from him in long tendrils. Aravheel placed her flame upon him. Thalanox's storm tore him apart. Arender whispered the word of ending. Cylindra captured his last coherent thought and bound it as the labyrinth's lock. Miracos' heartbeat timed the ritual, each beat shaping the lattice of eternity. And Vorlith died. His death was a scream that shattered the void. His body, if such a thing could be called a body, collapsed into a singularity of pulsing shadow, a wound in existence, and from that wound erupted the labyrinth prison. Ulgaraz lunged, too late to stop what had been woven. The prison snapped shut, dragging the Devourer into the depths of unmaking. Silence returned, but now the silence had weight. The primordials stood amidst the aftermath. Creation trembled around them, raw and newborn. Aravheel wept in the language of light. Each tear became a star. Thalanox roared his grief, birthing eternal storms. Cylindra's sorrow stretched across the tapestry of fate, weaving tragedy into all futures. Arender bowed his head, carrying the burden of facilitating the first god's death. Miracos' pulse faltered, forever changed, and thus the second age began, the age of shaping. The primordials, drained but resolute, began crafting the true forms of reality. Continents of celestial stone, oceans of dream water, skies carved from possibility. They fashioned lesser spirits to aid them, titans, sparks, warden beasts, each molded from fragments of their power. Yet always, in the deepest caverns of the cosmos, the labyrinth prison pulsed, for Vorlith's death was not quiet. His shadow lingered in the folds of existence. A rumor began to whisper among the newborn spirits. The shadow is not gone. And indeed, on some nights, Aravheel felt a presence at the edge of her light, a familiar flicker, a brother who had not fully died. Meanwhile, deep within the prison, Ulgaroz devoured everything it could touch. It devoured the walls, the corridors, the forgotten futures, the memory of Vorlith's last thought. And with every devoured piece, it learned. The devourer waited. It fed. It grew. And far above, unaware of the prison's evolving hunger, the primordials shaped the first mortals from dust and flame and storm, small, fragile beings who looked upon their gods with terror and awe. Some granted worship, some fled in fear, some rose in rebellion, and the primordials discovered that mortals carried something gods lacked: choice. It was the mortals who built the first temples, who named the sun, who mapped the wandering stars, who recorded the deeds of gods in trembling script. It was mortals who found the cracks left by the first war and sealed them with imagination, with stories, with the stubborn will to survive. And yet, as ages passed and mortals multiplied, a dream began to plague the seers and oracles. A dream of a vast shadow clawing at the foundations of the world, a shadow calling itself by an ancient name, a shadow whispering, "I am not done." Aravhiel recognized that whisper. It was Vorlith, or what was left of him. One night, she stood at the edge of the cosmic horizon and spoke into the void. "Brother, if you yet exist, show yourself." And something answered, weak, trembling, half-mad with hunger and pain, a flicker of shadow, a voice like wind through a tomb. "Sister, he is learning." Aravhiel's flame dimmed. "Who?" "The Devourer. He is learning to undo fate." Across the cosmos, Cylindra's tapestry quivered, threads snapped, prophecies unraveled, futures bled into each other like ink in water. Thalanox rumbled, "This is impossible." Arendar answered with quiet dread, "If fate unravels, even ending loses meaning." And Myrakos, heartbeat faltering, spoke the words none dared speak. "We must descend into the labyrinth and face him once more." Thus began the darkest quest of the primordials. They descended past the planes they had forged, past the demi-realms of titans, past the deep roots of the world tree, into the suffocating folds of the labyrinth prison. Mortals wept as the stars flickered in fear, seas rose, mountains trembled, the cosmos itself held its breath. Inside the labyrinth, time fractured. The primordials wandered through futures that never were, past echoes of their own deaths, past shadows of worlds unbegun. And in its heart, they found Ulgaroz, changed, evolved, terrifying. It no longer swirled with mindless hunger. It had grown limbs of shredded fate, eyes made from broken endings, teeth forged from devoured possibilities. And behind it, bound like a puppet of shadow and ruin, was Vorlith, half reborn, half consumed. Aravhiel cried out, "Brother!" But Vorlith only whispered, "Run." Ulgaroz rose to its full, impossible height, and the Second Great War began. This war was not like the first. This one occurred inside fate, inside meaning. Each blow rewritten destinies. Each wound erased possibilities. Each clash changed the past as well as the future. Mortals awakened from sleep to find their histories altered. Empires vanished from memory. Stars died before they were born. Time stuttered. Creation bled. The primordials fought with desperation sharper than any blade. Aravhiel's flame carved through writhing limbs of unraveling destiny. Thalanox hurled storms that destroyed entire timelines. Arendar tore endings from the mouths of the Devourer's maws. Cylindra rewove prophecies mid-strike. Myrakos shattered realms with the force of his pulse. But Ulgaroz, swollen with stolen fate, was far stronger than before. One by one, the primordials fell to their knees. And at last, as all seemed lost, a faint flicker stirred within Vorlith, an ember of his old power. The shadow that remembered himself. He whispered the first words he ever spoke at the dawn of time. "We are." And with those words, the ember ignited. Shadow engulfed Ulgaroz, not to bind but to smother, to erase, to deny. Vorlith pulled the Devourer into himself. Aravhiel screamed. Cylindra tore at fate. Miracos' heartbeat shattered mountains. Arender tried to halt the ending. Thalanox's storm split reality, but Vorlith only whispered, "This time, let me choose my own fate." And then he vanished, dragging Ulgaros into oblivion with him. The shockwave tore through the labyrinth. The prison collapsed. The primordials fled upward, through tearing fate and screaming timelines, back into the realm of stars. When the dust settled, creation was scarred, but safe, for now. Aravhiel stood alone at the edge of existence, staring into the void her brother once filled. A single star flickered beside her, the last remnant of his shadow. She placed it in the sky. Mortals would one day call it the morning star, the star that rises once every 1,000 ages. A reminder that even gods can die for the sake of the fragile. The primordials rebuilt what they could, though nothing would ever be the same. The tapestry of fate bore permanent scars, and the roots of time trembled with faint echoes of the devourer. And in the deepest corner of the cosmos, a whisper lingered, "We are not done." For though Vorlith had sacrificed himself twice, shadows never truly die. They only wait, and Ulgaros waits with him. The age of shaping ended. The age of mortals began. New gods rose, old gods faded, and the stories of the primordials became myth, then legend, then echo. Yet, sometimes, when the stars align in grief, when fate skips a beat, when a mortal dreams of a vast shadow and a white flame embracing in the dark, the universe remembers, and the whisper comes again. We are